Hello and welcome back to another video. My name is Mike Davies and today I'll be comparing Photoshop's free transform tool to GIMP's Unified Transform Tool. I'll be using the latest version of both programs for today's comparison. Before I get into that, guys, don't forget to check out my website at daviesmediadesign.com. You can enroll in my GIMP 2.10 Masterclass from beginner to pro photo editing on Udemy, and you can get access to additional content by becoming a DMD Premium member, and I'll include a link to this as well as all the relevant links from this tutorial in the description of the video. So I get a lot of questions asking whether or not GIMP has its own version of Photoshop's free transform tool. The answer to this is unequivocally yes, but I'm going to go through how Photoshop's free transform tool works first, and then you guys can see how it compares directly to GIMP's version, the Unified Transform Tool. So let's start off here inside of Photoshop, and I'm going to use the same exact photo for both examples, and you can download this photo for free from Pexels. I will include a link in the description. So here is that photo I want to open up. I'll click to open this in Photoshop, and now we're going to come over here. The first step is you want to unlock the background layer, so you have to click this little unlock icon there. And now here we are working on the image. And to access the free transform tool, what we have to do is go to Edit and come down here to Free Transform. You can also use the Control-T shortcut key. So I'll click on that, and that's going to activate these handles. So my first gripe with Photoshop here is that, of course, they've gone with the very minimalistic looking handles. This just makes it very not beginner friendly, I would say. I don't know, I think they went maybe a little too minimalist with it, and it's very hard to tell if you're not super familiar with Photoshop and haven't done a little research on how this tool works, how it is this tool actually works. So, you know, it's kind of hard to tell what exactly you're supposed to do here. But what you do is you'll see the handles in the corners and in the center portion here. You hover your mouse over the different handles and you can click and drag your mouse to perform a transformation. So in this case, when I'm dragging it to the left or right, it's scaling it up or down. If I release my mouse and I hover over the outer edge here, you're going to see the little rotate arrows here. So this is going to be for the rotate tool. I can rotate it either way. And if I click my mouse in the middle, I can move this. So it's going to come with 3 transformations by default to start. And there are additional transformations you can access via this tool, but just as it is set up right here on the canvas, you have 3 tools. So if I come over here and I click this little X here, or this little cross out symbol, that's actually going to undo all the changes. You can see it's a little bit glitchy here. There's some of the former outlines here from the handles sticking out. So Photoshop, pay a lot of money for it. Still going to be a little glitchy. So something else that's a little weird here is the tool disappears when you decide you don't want to apply the transformation. So you do have to re-access the tool with the Control-T shortcut key or by using the edit menu there. But up top here, you do have this toolbar so you can manually add your own settings. For example, for the scaling, you can change this to something like 50% and it'll automatically scale it down. If you want to rotate it by 15 degrees, that'll rotate it. And interpolation is going to be the quality after the transformation is performed. So by default, it's set to bicubic, but you have some other options here. So let's come back here and reset the angle here to 0. And we can access more than just the 3 tools that we've been accessing so far. So just the scale tool, the rotate, and the move. And that is by right-clicking on this image here. And you'll see inside of this menu, you're going to have the scale and rotate, of course. But then you also have skew, distort, and perspective. So let's go with perspective just for this example. And now when you have perspective selected, if I hover my mouse over this, you're going to see the mouse pointer is going to look a little different. So in this case, it's just allowing me to skew this. So not quite perspective there, but if I click and drag one of the corner handles, now we're going to get that perspective option. So this basically just switches this over to the perspective and the skew options here. So if you are a beginner user, it's not super intuitive. You do have to right click and access these additional menus to get those features from the free transform tool. So let me just click off of that menu. One other thing I want to point out before I switch over to GIMP is that you can change the center point around which everything is transforming. So to do that, you're going to first, let's come over and just exit out of the changes I've made so far. Control T to bring up the tool once again. So make sure you're clicked on your image with the tool. You come over here and you click this little unmarked box. And if you hover your mouse over it, you get the sort of Windows 98, Microsoft Office, I don't know, like little pop-up bubble here. I don't know why they haven't changed that or made it look a little nicer. Personally, I think it looks ancient. I think a lot of people make fun of GIMP's UI. I don't know, Photoshop's to me is equally bad, if not worse in some areas. So we're going to click this to toggle the little reference point on, the little center point. I believe it might be called a rotation point, technically speaking. So there you're going to see that rotation point, and now we can click and drag this to relocate where we want our transformations to be performed. And you can also use this little like sort of quick guide here, and that's going to automatically place this along certain points of your image. So there you can see it's moving around. So let's go with the bottom right corner. And now, for example, if I were to click and drag this, it would do that anyway, actually, if this wasn't there. But in this case, when I scale it down, it's going to scale based on the bottom corner. If I rotate, though, it'll rotate it along that bottom corner. So that is what that is doing. So if I wanted to keep the changes, I can click the little check mark, and that's going to apply the changes here to our layer. Some of you are asking, well, what about smart objects? Yes, you can convert the image to a smart object first before you perform the transformations, and that way you can revert it back to the original at any time and therefore make it a bit more non-destructive. All right, so let's move on to GIMP's version of this tool. So I'm going to open up GIMP here. This is GIMP 2.10.30, the latest version of GIMP. And what I'll do to open the image is I can drag and drop it from my computer directly onto here, or go to File, and in my case, go to Open Recent. And I'm going to click on that option there, the first option for me, and this is going to be the same image. And it's going to ask if I want to convert this to GIMP's built-in sRGB color space. This is optional. You can go with Convert or just go with Keep to keep the original. So let's go with Convert. Here is the same image, so the first distinction here between GIMP and Photoshop, aside from the color space we just went through, is going to be the fact that this layer is not going to be locked by default. It'll be unlocked, so you can go directly on the image here from the start. To access the tool here, the Unified Transform Tool, come over to your toolbox, and you'll see a tool group here. Click and hold your mouse, and you'll see the Unified Transform Tool. The shortcut key is going to be Shift-T. So release your mouse, that'll grab the tool, and now you can click on your image, and now the tool is applied. So one thing you're going to notice here right off the bat, the handles for this tool are not minimalistic like in Photoshop. Some people will prefer the minimalism. Of course, others are going to prefer having everything right here at their fingertips. I prefer the latter option. So with the handles all displayed here, you get an idea automatically or immediately as to what tools are available to you here inside of GIMP. So for example, if I hover my mouse over the boundary here for the image, you're going to see that the mouse pointer here, once we go outside, will change to the rotate tool. And then I can click and drag the image to rotate it, and I can release. If I hover over this larger block, it's going to change the mouse pointer to the scale tool. You're also going to see a highlight around the block here, letting you know that this is going to be active. That to me is another nice gesture from GIMP, if you want to call it that the tool is working. So then you can click and drag, and that's going to scale it down. And one thing I left out about Photoshop that is also true in GIMP is that you can use key modifiers. So if I hold the Shift key, it'll turn off the aspect ratio. If I let go, it's going to turn it back on. So release my mouse there. If I hover my mouse over the diamond or the smaller diamond here inside of the bigger square, you're going to see my mouse pointer will now change to the perspective icon. So here I can click and drag this, and that changes the perspective of the image. So one thing I actually will admit that I like a little bit better in Photoshop versus GIMP is that Photoshop allows you to adjust the perspective of multiple sides simultaneously. And that just makes it easier for you to adjust the perspective of an image or a layer. Here inside of GIMP, you have to click and drag these perspectives, and they're only going to go one at a time. There is a key modifier. You can hold Shift, and that sort of locks this in a single perspective, so either left to right or up and down. So that kind of helps, but not really. I actually do prefer Photoshop's way of doing this a little better. So now if I come over here, you'll see another diamond. This one is a more solid diamond as opposed to this one is just an empty diamond. So this more solid diamond here, if you want to call it that, is going to be the shear tool. So that's the same as skew in Photoshop. So if I click and drag this, it's going to shear to the left or right. And I can release my mouse and I can do the same thing here. So shear it up or down. So that is another tool there. You'll see another square here. This is also for the scale tool, but this is going from left to right instead of going from the corners down. And it's going to be kind of hard to tell because we've got the perspective on this. So once you're ready to apply this, you can just simply hit the Enter key, and that will transform it. So let's hit Control-Z to back up. One thing I like about GIMP over Photoshop is the tool is still active because it's inside of the toolbox there. So I don't have to access this via the menus. I can simply click on this, and now we have the Unified Transform tool applied to this once again. So remember we had the rotation point, or I was calling it the reference point inside of Photoshop. You have that inside of GIMP here as well. It's going to be right here, so all you have to do is click and drag that wherever you want. And for example, if I rotate, it'll rotate around that point. So another thing here about GIMP is that you're not going to have the toolbar that allows you to manually adjust the settings for certain things like the rotation angle or the scale size of this. So you are sort of eyeballing it as you're using this tool. I think if GIMP could make an improvement, it's to this right here, the transform matrix. That to me as a user isn't really doing me any good. I would prefer to see something there like you have in Photoshop where you can manually enter in degrees or manually enter in percentage or pixels in terms of a size for your image. You do have a bunch of tool options down here though that allow you to make some adjustments to this. Like in Photoshop, you have interpolation methods for the quality of the final transformed image or layer. You can also set your guides here, and this part is simpler than what you would find inside of Photoshop. For Photoshop, you have to go through a few menu items to find this. And then you have some information here about the key modifiers. So holding Shift is going to change the key modifiers. Let me reset this real quick. And if I drag and hold Shift, you'll see the key modifiers will switch there to the opposites. If I release Shift, they will switch back to the defaults. And you also have the Control key modifier. And again, down here, you have the Shift as well. And by the way, if you don't want to apply the changes to this, you can just hit the Escape key, and that's going to exit you out of the Unified Transform tool. All right, so that's it for this comparison between Photoshop's free transform tool and GIMP's Unified Transform tool. You can find out more about GIMP's Unified Transform tool and all of the tools and a lot of the features found inside of GIMP in my GIMP 2.10 Masterclass. But that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully you liked it. If you did, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and click the bell icon to be notified each time I have a brand new tutorial. You can check out any of the links to my resources in the description of the video. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.